many times have you breathed without realizing that very breath is shaping your entire life? In a world overflowing with noise, speed, and endless, invisible races we think we are living, but most of us are merely reacting like machines. Stoicism and ancient Egyptian wisdom share a truth few are quiet enough to hear. Your greatest power is never outside. It is the inner order you build every single day. This video will guide you through the 7 layers of your inner architecture, from breath, stillness, and self-mastery to the soul, destiny, and dignity. Each layer opens a doorway, and behind that doorway is a much stronger version of yourself. If you're searching for an answer, an awakening, or simply a moment to truly return to yourself, then this video is for you. Let's begin. Master your breath and you will master your unseen world. Master your breath and you will master your unseen world within. From ancient Egypt to Eastern spiritual traditions, the breath has always been regarded as the bridge between body and mind. Breath is the only thing that is at once entirely automatic and yet fully subject to conscious control. For that very reason, it is the gateway through which we enter the inner world. When you are angry, how is your breathing? Rapid, forceful, heavy. When you are anxious, short, broken, as if you can hardly breathe at all. When you are at peace, long, deep, gentle. The unseen world within, emotions, thoughts, memories, beliefs, emotional wounds, is not easy to access. Many people live their entire lives without ever truly entering themselves. They merely react out of habit, dragged along by external stimuli. I say this not to judge, but so that you may realize, each time you become conscious of your breath, you are gently changing the direction of your life. When you master your breath, you are sending a message to your nervous system, to your brain, to your entire body. It is all right. I am safe. I am awake. Here. From there, fear softens. Anger loosens. Panic slows by a single beat. You do not yet need to solve everything immediately. You only need to breathe properly, and wisdom will find space to speak. I wish to encourage you. You cannot instantly master every circumstance outside, but you can begin by mastering your breath in the next 30 seconds. And sometimes those 30 seconds save an entire situation, save a relationship, even save a life. Remember, the breath is the most subtle form of power you always carry with you. Silence was the first temple where the Egyptians met their own soul. Silence was the first temple where the Egyptians met their own soul. Silence here does not merely mean the absence of sound, but inner quiet, not the disappearance of thought, but the moment when thought no longer drags you along like a storm. The ancient Egyptians, like many wise civilizations, understood human beings cannot hear the voice of their soul when everything is too loud. Today we live amid notification sounds, social media work, pressure, comparison with others, the anxiety of livelihood, the fear of falling behind. In such a context, silence becomes a luxury item, yet it is precisely what we need most. Why is silence called a temple? Because it is sacred ground. It is where you meet your true self. There you no longer have to perform to appear strong, to strain for anyone's gaze. There you are simply a living being, breathing, sensing, existing. I have contemplated this for a long time. Much of our suffering comes from not daring to sit quietly with ourselves. We fear silence because in silence, buried pain, suppressed memories, unanswered questions, all have a chance to rise. But that is precisely the doorway to healing and growth. I want to tell you, sometimes you do not need more knowledge or more advice. You only need 10 minutes of stillness, doing nothing, not trying to be good, not striving to be excellent. Just sit there, inhale, exhale, noticing what is happening inside without judgment. In silence, the soul no longer has to scream. It only whispers, "I have been here all along. Thank you for finally returning." Stillness was their doorway to infinite strength. Stillness was their doorway to infinite strength. This continues the previous thought. Stillness is not weakness, not escape. On the contrary, stillness is the doorway to strength. We often think strength means speaking loudly, reacting quickly, displaying decisiveness, overpowering others. But the ancient Egyptians and many other sages understood more deeply. True strength is not doing more but standing firmer. Stillness is like the pause before an arrow is released. If you shoot too quickly, the arrow goes astray. If you draw the bow with focus and stillness, the shot may take only a moment, but behind it lies a long accumulation of force. When you fall into crisis, betrayal, financial collapse, emotional breakdown, the sudden collapse of a life structure, your natural reaction is panic, the urge to act immediately. But it is precisely in such moments that stillness becomes infinite strength. Stillness, so you do not act foolishly. Stillness, so you do not speak words that wound further. Stillness, so a deeper, more mature wisdom may speak. I say this not from books, but from observing human life. The more truly mature a person becomes, the less hastily they react, yet the more clearly they act once they have decided. Remember, stillness does not kill strength. Stillness incubates strength like glowing embers before they burst into flame. A calm mind was seen as a sign of divine strength. A calm mind was seen as a sign of divine strength. This is another step forward in thought, not only stillness, but a heart and a mind in a state of calm. The ancients believed whoever keeps a calm mind amid storms touches divine strength, a power beyond the small self. A calm mind is not a mind that has no thoughts, feels no anxiety, contains no negative emotions. It is a mind that can hold all of these without shattering. Imagine this. A calm mind is a deep lake. The wind may ripple the surface, but the depth remains intact. An unquiet person is a shallow cup. A single pebble makes it overflow. When the mind is calm, you are not easily stirred by praise or blame. You are not driven by fear of loss. You do not decide merely from passing emotion. The Egyptians called this divine strength because then a person no longer reacts from mere survival instinct but acts from a wider, deeper vision, as if there were a force greater than the personal ego guiding the way. I want to encourage you. You do not have to become a saint to possess a calm mind. You only need to begin with very small things. Before replying to a message that irritates you, take 3 deep breaths. Before arguing to the end, be silent for 1 minute and feel whether what you are about to say will heal or destroy. Before blaming yourself, ask, if I were my own best friend, what would I say to myself right now? Each time you choose calm over impulse, you are training this divine strength. The Egyptians knew impatience weakens the spirit. The Egyptians knew impatience weakens the spirit. This is a subtle warning. We often treat impatience as a small habit, but the ancients saw it as something that weakens the soul. What is impatience? Wanting results without walking through process. Wanting to be understood immediately without granting time. Wanting to mature, yet avoiding pain. Fearing confrontation, fearing waiting. Why does impatience weaken the spirit? 1. It makes you dependent on the outside. You are only happy when things come immediately. You never learn the art of patience, so every delay brings irritation, discouragement, and a sense of injustice. The spirit becomes fragile, easily broken. 2. It makes you abandon the journey. Many fail not for lack of talent, but because they cannot endure the slow, the long, the part with no visible results. They turn aside just before the summit simply because they are tired and restless. 3. It robs you of depth. Relationships, work, and skills that come too quickly without time to soak in often fade just as fast. A strong spirit is one that knows how to wait, how to endure, how to be shaped by time. I want to tell you, impatience does not bring you to the destination sooner. It only exhausts you sooner. This does not mean being lazy or delaying meaninglessly. It means act decisively, but accept the process with patience. Walk fast, but let the mind remain unhurried. Let this sentence echo whenever you want to give up. Impatience is weakening my spirit. I am trying to flee the process, not the difficulty, and then choose to remain a little longer on the path. The wise breathed slowly and lived deeply. The wise breathed slowly and lived deeply. This sentence gathers everything together: breath, stillness, calm, patience, all lead to one state: living deeply. What does it mean to live deeply? Not drifting through today unconsciously. Not letting emotion control you without understanding why. Not living only on the surface, eating, sleeping, working, entertaining, repeating. The one who breathes slowly is one who knows how to pause and feel. What am I thinking? What am I fearing? What do I truly want? Knows how to cherish a sincere conversation, a peaceful afternoon, a moment of being oneself. I believe depth is not using complex words, but fully inhabiting simple moments. When you breathe slowly, you allow the body to relax. You allow the mind to stop panicking. You allow the soul to have a place in daily life. When you live deeply, an ordinary day becomes unforgettable. A life that looks unremarkable outside may become a masterpiece within. In summary, I want to say to you, 1. Begin with the breath, for it is the easiest doorway into the inner world. 2. Seek silence, not as an escape, but as a temple where you meet yourself again. 3. Cherish inner calm, for it is the sign of a strength that rises beyond the small self. 4. Recognize and release impatience, for it erodes the spirit and steals the depth of your life. 5. Live slowly within, even if you must move fast without, for the wise know how to advance and how to guard their inner depth. I do not expect you to change after one essay. I only hope the next time you feel suffocated by pressure, you will remember master your breath. Return to your breathing. The next time you feel lost, you will dare to turn off your phone and sit alone in silence, even for only 5 minutes. The next time you rush to judge a person, a matter, or yourself, you will remember impatience weakens the spirit. And if there is one thing I wish to say to you as a companion on the inner journey, it is this: you are not weak. You have simply not stood still long enough to realize the strength waiting within. What haunts me most when I think of breath and silence is this: they remind us that inner freedom is never entirely taken away unless we ourselves relinquish it. A person trapped in suffocating circumstances, in a toxic family, in a suffocating workplace, still retains one minimal territory that no one can invade: the way they breathe, the way they see, the way they speak to themselves. At a deeper level, breath and silence are not merely techniques for emotional regulation, but an existential declaration. I refuse to let the world determine the quality of my presence. We often think peace is the result of everything outside finally being in order. I believe the opposite inner peace is the cause that changes how we experience the world. The more a person can sit with themselves, the less they are manipulated by advertising, by the pressure to prove, by meaningless races. In an age where the body, the mind, and human attention are almost entirely commodified, returning to the breath and to silence is not merely self-care. It is a quiet act of resistance against a consumerist civilization. I believe one who masters the breath begins to step out of the role of a drifting spectator and into that of the author of their life. One who dares to make a covenant with silence no longer has to beg for fragments of peace from likes, comments, praise, or attention. And if I must say it briefly, inner peace is not a reward for the excellent, but the birthright of anyone brave enough to return to themselves for long enough. Power begins when you stop fighting your own shadow. Power begins when you stop fighting your own shadow. The shadow here is not physical, but refers to fear, selfishness, jealousy, rage, hidden desires, painful memories, the parts of ourselves we do not wish to admit. Most of us live in a silent inner war. We hate our own weakness. We deny our envy. We feel ashamed of desire. We refuse to accept our darker side. But my friends, what you resist persists. What you deny begins to rule you in secret. Fighting your inner darkness is like striking your own shadow on the wall. You raise your hand, it rises too. You strike, it strikes back, and you grow exhausted while it remains. Strength in the understanding of the ancient Egyptians is not in destroying the shadow, but in recognizing it, naming it, understanding it, and learning to live with it consciously. When you dare to say, "I see both the light and the darkness within me," you are no longer its victim. Let me encourage you with a truth that seems paradoxical. The more a person dares to face their own darkness, the less that darkness controls them. The more one pretends to be pure, the more easily they are ruled by what they refuse to see. I am not advising you to glorify the darkness. I am only advising you not to run from it. What you need is awareness, courage, honesty with yourself. And the moment you stop proving that you are good, stop hiding, stop pretending, that is when real strength begins to grow. One who controls desire controls destiny. Desire is not evil. Desire is the engine of survival and growth. But when desire rules you, you become a slave. When you rule desire, you become the author of your life. Desire takes many forms: for money, for power, to be loved, to be recognized, for pleasure, for victory, for superiority. If you observe closely, great human tragedies rarely begin with lack, but with the inability to stop. Not because one loves that one suffers, but because one tries to possess through love. Not because one wants success that one is in pain, but because one sells the soul for success. The Egyptians understood early on, you cannot rule your destiny if you cannot rule your hunger and thirst within. I do not urge you to live in austerity. I only urge you to ask yourself one essential question: am I owning this, or is it owning me? If money robs you of sleep, power corrupts you, love makes you small, fame makes you lose yourself, then you are no longer guiding your life. You are being dragged. I say this from experience and observation. Freedom does not come from how much you possess. Freedom comes from not being bound by what you possess. Destiny is not a rigid decree from the heavens. It is written each day by what you choose to keep, what you dare to release, what you consume, and what you refuse. Those who ruled themselves were considered true kings. The ancients made a clear distinction. One may sit on a throne and still not be a king. One who masters himself is the true king. You may run a company, lead a family, govern an organization, but if you cannot contain your emotions, cannot restrain your anger, are easily seduced by flattery, provocation, and temptation, then by ancient wisdom, you have status, but not sovereignty. The true king rules. Fear rules, anger rules, greed rules, the hunger for power. His kingdom lies not on any map, but within. And I say this to encourage you. You do not need a throne to be a king. You only need the courage to take responsibility for your life. Each time you refuse to blame, refuse self-pity, refuse to flee from consequences, refuse to pour your anger onto others, you are placing the crown of inner strength upon your own head. To be king does not mean never to fall. To be king is to rise without despising yourself, correct without excuses, accept responsibility without resenting life. Emotion was a river, wisdom was its channel. Emotion is a mighty current. The more you block it, the higher it rises. The more you repress it, the more violently it breaks its banks. The mistake of many to suppress emotion or to indulge it. Both are dangerous. The Egyptians taught a profound truth. Do not dam the river, guide it. Wisdom does not destroy emotion. Wisdom builds a path for emotion. Sorrow becomes empathy. Anger becomes healthy boundaries. Fear becomes caution. Love becomes compassion without possession. I often tell those who are wounded, emotion is not your enemy. What hurts you is letting it lead instead of leading it. A person who never cries is not strong. A person who cries without collapse, without hatred, without blind revenge, that is true inner power. Emotion is like fire uncontrolled. It consumes. Understood? It warms. It cooks. It illuminates. Wisdom is not cold. Wisdom simply knows where each emotion belongs. Strength was not in force but in control. We often confuse shouting, strength threatening, power suppressing, control. The ancients taught the opposite one, who must use violence to prove strength is in truth powerless. The one who can restrain rage when destruction is within reach can step back from insult to preserve dignity, can refuse revenge so as not to degrade the soul, is a lion who does not need to roar. Self-control is not repression. It is choice. You must ask yourself, am I reacting or am I choosing? The strong person can say no to what is tempting, can stop, though wanting to continue, can remain silent when others expect an explosion, and the ability not to obey impulse but to act by values is the rarest form of power. The soul only obeys those who listen first. This is a tender and compassionate truth. We often command ourselves, be strong, do not be weak, stop feeling, work harder. But the soul does not live by orders. It opens only to listening. If you deny your pain, forbid yourself sadness, ignore signs of exhaustion, refuse yourself rest, the soul will rebel through anxiety, depression, emptiness, disorientation. To listen to the soul is to ask, where am I truly tired? What am I sacrificing? For whom am I living? Am I betraying myself to please others? When you listen, the soul begins to cooperate. When the soul cooperates, your life transforms. When we speak of self-mastery, it is easy to slide into a rigid model as if we must become perfect machines without error, weakness, or failure. My view is different. Self-mastery is not the elimination of inner chaos, but learning to converse with it without being devoured.
The ancient Egyptians, when speaking of the shadow of desire of emotion as a river, were reminding us the wild within every person is not an enemy, but raw energy waiting to be directed. I believe one of the great misunderstandings of our age is to think that freedom means doing whatever one wants. True freedom is the capacity not to have to obey every want. The one who controls desire is not one who has no desire, but one who can stand outside the wave long enough to ask, does this serve the deeper life I seek? When desire is denied, dialogue, it turns into obsession. When it is recognized and placed in order, it becomes a subtle power. I also believe a society that celebrates outer success but ignores the art of inner governance will eventually pay with violence, addiction, emptiness, and spiritual exhaustion. A person who refuses responsibility for their own darkness will make others bear it through manipulation, abuse, or raw rage.
To be a king within is not to declare I am above all, but to sit with your worst self and say, I will no longer run from you, but I will not let you drive my life. From that moment on, true power begins.
The heart was weighed not by words, but by truth. In ancient Egyptian civilization, people believed that after death, a person's heart would be placed on a scale with the feather of the goddess Ma'at, the symbol of truth. If the heart was heavier than the feather, the soul could not cross into the afterlife. That story is not only religion, it is a great moral metaphor. Human beings are not judged by the words they speak, but by the truth they live. We can say beautiful things, preach morality to others, build a charming image, but the heart is not deceived. Your true nature lies in what you do when no one is watching, how you treat those who are weaker, your attitude when no one requires you to be kind. I have lived long enough to see that many people speak rightly, but live wrongly, and many others say almost nothing. Yet their whole life is a living lesson. Truth is not noisy. It lies in the way you keep your promises,
Accept responsibility. Do not betray trust. Do not say one thing and do another.
I want to tell you, do not try to be right in the eyes of the crowd. Be real before your own conscience. No one lives perfectly, but whoever lives truthfully carries a light heart. And a light heart travels far. To know yourself was considered the highest form of magic. Magic, in the ancient sense, was not about turning water into wine or flying through the air. True magic is changing the way you exist in the world. And there is no magic more powerful than knowing who you are. Most people live by family expectations, by society's values, by the trends of the age. But very few know what they truly want, what they fear, where their wounds come from. Knowing yourself is not easy. It demands courage, honesty, confrontation. Because when you understand yourself, you discover you are not as talented as you once thought, but also not as hopeless as you once feared. I want to emphasize, knowing yourself does not make you greater than anyone else, but it makes you far more free. You no longer envy the path of others, chase dreams that are not yours, measure your worth by other people's gaze. This magic needs no ritual, no spell, only your willingness to turn inward and ask hard questions. Am I living truly or just performing? Do I do this out of passion or out of fear? If no one judged me, how would I choose to live? Each honest answer is one more layer of chains being removed.
Your spirit is older than your body and wiser than your mind. This sentence opens another dimension of being human. We often identify ourselves with memory, ourselves with thought, ourselves with the body. But the Egyptians said you did not begin at birth, and you do not end when the body dissolves. The spirit or soul was seen as an essence more ancient than all forms. This does not require you to believe in reincarnation or religion. You only need to observe. There are things you know without ever learning them. There are fears that do not come from your present experience. There are stirrings that go beyond reason. That is the voice of the deeper part of you. The spirit is wiser than the mind because the mind relies on past data. The spirit relies on intuition. The mind asks, is it safe? The spirit asks, is it right? And often, the spirit is right. I have seen many people who had perfect reasons to stay, but whose souls had left long before.
They continue but like living corpses. I say this so that you understand. Do not live only from the head. Live with the deep sensitivity within. When your spirit is tired, every success becomes empty. They believe the soul must be trained like the body. We train our muscles yet starve the soul. We go to the gym, diet, upgrade our appearance, while the soul is flooded with informational trash. Deprived of stillness, deprived of meaning, deprived of spiritual nourishment. The soul also needs training through deep reading, instead of quick scrolling through, quieting the mind, instead of running away through reflection, instead of mindless busyness, through forgiveness, instead of feeding resentment. An untrained soul will become fragile, easily wounded, easily bitter. A trained soul will become steady, generous, clear-sighted. I want to encourage you. Do not invest only in a body that will grow old. Invest in the soul that will carry you through every season of life.
The body was a vessel, the soul the fire within. This sentence is beautiful and utterly true. Your body changes, ages, falls ill, passes away. But the soul is what makes you love, endure, sacrifice, dream. If the body is the lamp, the soul is the light. A beautiful body with an empty soul is only a polished shell. A weary body with a strong soul still radiates warmth. I want to say, do not live just to look fine. Live to truly have fire within. That fire is not blind ambition. It is meaning, values, love, compassion.
The sayings we have just walked through remind us that 1. Do not live by words, live by truth. 2. Do not live like a sleepwalker. Know who you are. 3. Do not worship the mind alone. Listen to the soul. 4. Do not abandon the inner world. Train it. Do not identify yourself with the body. Guard the inner fire. I want to tell you, you are not as small as you think. You are far older, deeper, and greater. And if you touch your own soul, you touch the most beautiful part of humanity. When we say soul, many immediately think of religion, belief systems, and metaphysical debates. I want to propose a more practical understanding. Soul is the name we give to the depth within a human being that no language fully captures. It is the refuge of intuition, of moral sense of those questions like, what am I living for? That no salary or job title can answer. I believe that even if we put aside all belief systems, one thing is hard to deny. There is a part of us that always feels larger than a resume, larger than the memories we can recount, larger than the roles we play. When the Egyptians said the spirit is older than the body, it was not only a metaphysical claim. It was a reminder that you do not start from zero. You inherit a depth that may take you a lifetime to explore. This has powerful ethical consequences. If the soul is the fire within, then every time we betray our values, we are laying another layer of ash upon that fire. If the soul must be trained, then each time we choose ease and shallowness, we are starving the deepest part of ourselves to indulge the temporary ego. I believe the great crisis of our time is not only economic, environmental, or political, but existential. Human beings have lost the language to speak about their own soul, so they end up defining themselves by what can be measured and counted. The lesson from the Egyptians is this: if we forget the inner fire, we may gain everything, yet become exiles within our own lives. Your inner order creates your outer world. We often blame circumstances, an unjust society, a difficult economy, heartless people, harsh times. But the Egyptians looked deeper. The world you live in reflects the state within you. A person in inner chaos lives a chaotic life, full of fear, sees the world as a battlefield, full of anxiety, sees everything as a threat. At peace, finds even harsh conditions less sharp. I am not saying the world is merely a mental illusion. I am saying two people can stand in the same place yet live in two different worlds. A person with inner order knows how to prioritize, does not torment themselves needlessly, does not live in constant inner conflict. A person chaotic inside stays busy yet empty, chases many things but has no depth. My advice to you: do not rush to fix the world. First, tidy the inner room of your own mind. An orderly mind has less turmoil, less noise, less toxin, and like a clean house, it lets every guest, thoughts, emotions, people enter more gently. Inner balance was the secret behind outer greatness. Out there, people praise effort, achievement, victory, fame. But behind every enduring greatness, there is always a balanced mind. It is no accident that those who are extreme burn out quickly, while those who keep a steady rhythm go far. Balance is not letting work devour your private life, not letting emotion drag you into the abyss, not letting reason turn your heart to ice. I have seen successful people who are depressed, famous people who are empty, wealthy people who live in panic. Because without balance, success becomes a burden. Greatness is not only being above others, but not losing yourself. I want you to remember, you may climb high, but if your inner world is unfinished, you only look at life from the peak of loneliness. Balance is the art of knowing when to advance, when to retreat, when to rest. That is a wisdom deeper than ambition. Every thought carves the shape of destiny. There are chisels that make no sound, and those are thoughts.
Each thought carves a line into your character, etches another groove into your reflexes, and in the end, carves your life. A person who often thinks I am worthless will live as if they are a loser. A person who thinks life is only a struggle will live in constant suspicion and bitterness. A person who thinks I can learn will grow. Thoughts do not stay only in your head, they flow into your words, your actions, your choices. And one day, you look back and call it destiny. I want to tell you, destiny does not fall upon you like a natural disaster. You sculpt it each day by the way you think. The important question: are you letting others program your thinking? Are you feeding beliefs that make you smaller? You cannot control all circumstances, but you can choose the lens, choose the interpretation, choose the story you tell about your life. And that changes everything. They honored darkness as much as light within themselves. This sentence connects deeply with Group 2 and Group 3. The Egyptians did not deny darkness, did not idolize light. They understood human beings are neither purely good nor entirely evil. We are complex and learning to balance. Those who try to become all light often live artificially, deny their negative emotions, and unintentionally make their darkness stronger. Conversely, those who dwell only in darkness easily become cynical, bitter, self-destructive. Balance is knowing your light so you do not lose your way, knowing your darkness so you do not live in illusion. I want to tell you, you do not need to be perfect, you only need to be truthful. When you dare to admit your weakness, jealousy, selfishness without hating yourself, that is maturity. Light does not come from denying darkness. Light comes from shining directly upon it. These truths teach us that 1, the outer world begins from the inner world. 2, there is no true greatness without balance. 3, destiny is carved by thought. 4, both light and shadow deserve to be acknowledged. I want you to carry this with you. Do not live as someone tossed around by life. Live as one who is quietly rearranging the world from within. When I say your inner order creates your outer world, I do not see it as some mystical formula like think positively and everything will magically improve. I see a more uncomfortable truth. We are always the interpreters of reality, and the quality of that interpretation depends on how ordered we are inside. 2 people face the same event: job loss, breakup, illness, yet one calls it a curse, the other a call to change. 2 completely different psychological worlds are born from the same fact. Inner order to me is not shutting down all emotions to keep things tidy, but knowing which emotions need a conversation, which thoughts need to be questioned, which beliefs need revision, which wounds need to be seen in a new light. Some people think they are balanced,
because they have turned off their feelings and live like machines. That is not balance, that is numbness. True balance is the capacity to hold contradictions within without breaking, to be both vulnerable and brave, afraid and still moving forward, imperfect and yet worthy of love. I believe a society becomes dangerous when the majority of its people lack inner order but have too many tools to exert influence, do not understand themselves yet, are easily agitated by propaganda and social media. When the Egyptians taught about balance, they were really speaking of a kind of spiritual immunity. Once your inner world is no longer chaotic, to the point of being jerked around by every stimulus, you become harder to control, harder to manipulate, and therefore more free. Every thought was believed to carve the shape of destiny. People often say, I was born this way. My circumstances are like this. My fate is simply miserable. But the ancient Egyptians said, it is not your circumstances, but the way you think about them that carves the life you live. No thought stops at awareness. It flows into your emotional states, the way you decide, the way you speak, the people you choose to connect with, the risks you dare to take, the opportunities you dare to enter. And from there, a life takes shape. You may live in poverty without becoming small, or in wealth without becoming free. The difference lies in the mind. I want to ask you, what are you saying to yourself each day? What beliefs are you repeating in your mind like sacred chants? Because what you repeat long enough becomes the ground you stand on. If you tell yourself, I am not good enough, no one truly loves me, I always fail, then you are not merely complaining, you are building a house you will live in for the rest of your life. But here is where the miracle also lies. You can rewrite destiny by changing the language you use with yourself. The greatest journey was inward, not across deserts. The Egyptians truly crossed deserts. They knew what bodily hardship meant. And they said, what is harder than the desert is the self. The inward journey has no maps, no lighthouse, no fixed directions. Only fear, memory, darkness, and unanswered questions. Many people travel the world, change jobs, change cities, change lovers, yet never truly journey inward. They run without knowing what they are running from. The outward journey may give you beautiful photos, strange experiences, and stories to tell. But the inward journey gives you freedom from yourself, deep understanding, and an inner strength no one can take away. I want to tell you, if you feel confused, it may be that you are standing at the doorway of the inner journey. Do not be afraid. Being lost is not when you wander. Being lost is when you are about to find something ancient, your true self. The past lived inside the blood, the future inside the mind. This sentence is a beautiful map of time. The past in the blood, ancestral memory, inheritance culture, repeated generational patterns. You are not born from emptiness. You carry your parents' fears, your lineage's unfinished dreams, old wounds that were never healed. Sometimes you feel sad without knowing why you are afraid, without knowing the source. That is the blood speaking, the future in the mind. But the Egyptians did not say destiny was fixed. They said the future does not lie in blood, but in awareness. You cannot choose your ancestors, but you can choose how you live, how you think, how you respond. And with those choices, you can cut the chain of pain, end cycles of suffering, and open a new current of life. I want to say you are not guilty for what you inherited, but you are responsible for what you continue. The past does not ask your permission to exist, but the future is waiting for you to write it. One strong thought could outweigh 1,000 enemies. We usually think enemies are people, opponents, external forces. The ancients thought differently. The most dangerous enemy is a weak thought. If you do not believe in yourself, doubt your worth, fear failure so much that you never try, you can live in paradise, as if in a prison. On the other hand, the one who trusts their path, holds to their ideals, does not give up even when opposed, keeps moving forward. A strong thought is not illusion, but conviction built on understanding and experience. A right thought guides you, untangles the inner world, keeps you standing when the outer world collapses. I ask you, if you lost everything tomorrow, would you still have one belief strong enough to stand on? If the answer is yes, you have already won. Nothing outside you was stronger than what slept inside. This is a declaration of inner power. We fear society, authority, change being cast aside. The Egyptians said all of that is smaller than the power still sleeping within you. Inside you are endurance, adaptive intelligence, the ability to be reborn, depths of strength you have never had to use. A person does not know how strong they are until they have no choice but to be strong. I want to say, you are not weak. You have simply not yet been summoned by destiny. Storms do not break strong trees. They drive roots deeper. These teaches us thought carves destiny. The most important journey is inward. The past does not bind you. Awareness guides you. One strong belief outweighs an army. Inner power is greater than any outer force. And if I could give you one sentence only, do not live as a victim of life. Live as the designer of destiny. When I say every thought carves the shape of destiny, I am not speaking of toxic positivity. The idea that if you simply think well, everything will become well. Reality is not so simple. I understand it this way. Instead, thought does not immediately change circumstances, but it changes the one who walks through circumstances. That person then makes new choices, and slowly the road of life takes on a different form. Destiny, in my view, is neither a fixed script nor a blank page. It is like a piece of music with an existing theme, family background, history, what you did not choose, but how you play the music, how you interpret, pause, emphasize, depends greatly on thought. A person may carry the entire history of their ancestors in their blood, yet by nurturing a new understanding, a new attitude in the mind, become the breaking point of an entire lineage. I believe each time you dare to question the truths you were fed as a child, you are cracking the old wall of destiny. Each time you choose a way of thinking that is less small, less bitter, less victim-like, you are redrawing the outline of your life. A strong thought is not a whispered slogan for self-hypnosis. It is a clear and honest vision, tested by collision, yet still able to hold faith in one's own worth and in the meaning of living. From there, destiny is no longer a prison. It becomes the raw material from which you sculpt a life of intention. The soul grows strong when fear loses its voice. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is a survival signal. The problem is we live according to it instead of listening to it with awareness. Fear does not let you step out of your comfort zone, does not let you try anything new, does not let you live truthfully. Each of us has our own fearful voice. What if I fail? What if I am rejected? What if I am not good enough? What if they laugh at me and you step back? The soul does not grow strong because you run from fear. The soul grows strong when you look fear in the eye and keep walking. Not that you no longer tremble, but that you tremble and do not turn aside. I want to tell you, courage is not the absence of fear. It is no longer letting fear make your decisions for you. Each time you take a step, while your heart is pounding, that is the moment your soul expands a little more. They did not fear death. They feared an unlived life. Death is the common destination. No one escapes. But what haunted the Egyptians was not death itself. It was to die without ever truly living to leave, with too many things never begun. What is an unlived life? Living by a script written by others, working yourself numb and forgetting you exist, breathing, without knowing what you are living for, loving, without daring to open your heart, dreaming, but never taking a step. I have met many people not dead yet, but no longer alive. They exist like a shadow without feeling, without passion, without hope. The Egyptians said, "Better to die after living fully than to live an entire lifetime without ever truly existing." I want to gently ask you, if today were the last day, would you grieve for what you have not said, not loved, not dared to do? If the answer is yes, then your life is still unfinished and you still have time. True power was to awaken without fear. Awakening is not knowing a lot, reading many books, having elegant philosophies. Awakening is seeing life without lying to yourself, seeing yourself without lying to life. And when you awaken, you see your own limits. You see the fragility of life. You see that everything can be lost. That is why many people are afraid to awaken. They prefer the dream over the truth. They choose distraction, consumption, empty, busyness, just so they do not have to look deeply. But awakening is not a sentence. It is liberation. The awakened one no longer panics. Before loss, does not live to impress, is not afraid to begin again. Awakening does not take your life away. It gives you back to yourself. And when you awaken without fear, nothing can truly bind you, because you no longer live inside illusion. We have just walked together through the meaning of these sayings. Fear is not the Lord. You are the King. Death is not as frightening as a life never lived. Awakening does not kill you. It frees you. If I could say only one sentence, do not wait until you are close to death to begin to live. I believe the most terrifying thing is not fear itself, but a life not quiet enough to recognize that we are making decisions out of fear, then using reason to justify them. Fear is very clever. It rarely calls itself fear. It wears the masks of realism, safety, prudence, being mature. When the Egyptians said the soul grows strong when fear loses its voice, I understand it as that moment when we stop letting that voice decide our path, even though it may still whisper somewhere in our chest. Death, as I see it, is not only biological ending, but a mirror that magnifies our values. What we truly care about becomes painfully clear when we face our own finitude. The one who does not fear death but fears a life never truly lived is someone who has begun to wake from the dream of achievement, of comparison, of seeking validation. Awakening does not make life easier. It simply makes us less willing to deceive ourselves. And that is the beginning of a very strange kind of strength. The strength to live truthfully, knowing there will be a price. I believe that without an awareness of death, humans easily live wastefully, wasting time on meaningless arguments, wasting the heart on relationships that do not respect us, wasting talent on goals that never touch the soul. Seen rightly, death is not a threat, but a silent teacher who reminds us, do not postpone becoming yourself any longer. They wrote power in symbols to hide it from the unready. Modern people often ask, why is ancient knowledge always so obscure? Why not speak plainly? Why hide behind symbols? The Egyptians would smile and then say, because everyone can read, but not everyone can understand. Sacred knowledge is not like ordinary information. It is not learn, understand, apply. It is mature, understand, live differently. Symbols are a natural filter. Those who merely glance see only images. Those who contemplate see layers of meaning. Those who have lived deeply enough see themselves within. Symbols do not hide knowledge from the curious. They hide knowledge from the unripe. My friends, there are forms of knowledge which, if given too early, become poison. Inner power placed in the hands of the selfish, the immature, those who only wish to triumph over others, becomes an instrument of destruction. That is why the ancients did not preach loudly. They whispered through images, metaphors, symbols, myths, not to make things difficult, but so that those not yet ready would pass by those who were ready, would remain. I want to tell you, if a piece of knowledge makes you arrogant, you have likely misunderstood it. True knowledge makes you humble, opens your heart, and lightens you. The more one understands, the less one boasts. The deeper one becomes, the simpler one lives. Self-respect was considered sacred armor. If I could choose one sentence among all these sayings to advise someone on how to live decently and strongly, I would choose this one. Not intelligence, but self-respect. Not power, but dignity. You may be poor, unknown, without authority. But if you do not sell your conscience, do not trade your values, do not bow to what is wrong, you are wearing an armor nothing can pierce. The Egyptians knew one who loses self-respect will sooner or later lose everything. A person without self-respect will do what they once despised, will live merely to be accepted, and will die despising themselves. Self-respect is not arrogance, thinking yourself above others. Self-respect is never doing what makes you unable to look at yourself in the mirror, never turning yourself into a tool for others, never trading your soul for comfort. I say this to you with all seriousness. Do not lose yourself just to remain in a place that does not belong to you. Do not drop your dignity for a false sense of peace. Life may take from you money, status, youth, but if you keep your self-respect, you are never poor. Knowledge is not for the hurried. Dignity is not for sale at any price. And now I want to close with a few words to you. I deeply resonate with the idea that sacred knowledge has always been encoded in symbols to keep it from those who are not ready. Today, our problem is the opposite. Too much information is wide open, but too little experience is deep enough to turn it into wisdom. A swipe of the screen can bring us close to almost every secret, every spiritual tradition, every philosophical treasure. But if the inner world remains hurried, arrogant, devoid of self-respect, then those things either become tools for vanity or just another layer of paint over the old ego. I believe that self-respect as sacred armor is one of the clearest signs that someone is ready to approach deeper forms of knowledge. The less self-respect a person has, the more likely they are to use knowledge, including spiritual knowledge, as a weapon to judge, control, or manipulate. By contrast, those who truly respect themselves usually respect their own limits, respect others, respect the complexity of life. They rarely use understanding as a form of dominance. To me, sacred knowledge today does not lie in mystery, but in the ability to live in alignment with what one knows to be right, even when no one is watching, even when it costs, even when it is slower than others. Dignity, therefore, is not a decorative, moral accessory. It is the final boundary that protects the soul from being sold in a world where everything has a price. And perhaps the signs of real spiritual maturity are very simple. They know much, but speak little. They can win, but do not trample. They can compromise, but do not betray themselves. That is the moment when knowledge ceases to be something you possess and becomes the way you exist. You see, in the end, life doesn't transform through grand leaps, but through the smallest moments. One slower breath, one quiet minute, one choice of self-control over impulse. If today you realized even a single truth, that your greatest strength is still sleeping within you, then you've already taken a powerful step. Stoicism and ancient Egyptian wisdom were never meant to be interesting ideas. They are guiding principles for living more deeply, for protecting your dignity, and for building an inner world no external chaos can break. If you want to continue this journey with me, the journey of constructing your own inner architecture, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next video in this series. Until we meet again, remember, your power is not out there. It has always begun from within.